Thursday, November 20th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Climate Week, Day 4, folks. Lots to talk about in this hour. Climate justice, how to better prepare communities for climate disasters, informing people, engaging youth, and youth engaging everyone else, and talking to advocates and activists. Day 4, Climate Week, like I mentioned. Just to start, couple little things. We started the week talking about the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in Belém, Brazil. A couple days ago, this came out. International Civil Society denounced Canada as fossil of the day. The first time since 2014 that Canada has been singled out for this dishonor. Fossil of the Day is awarded during COPs to the countries who are the best at being the worst and doing the most to do the least around climate. So this has to do with some of the recent changes and looks at climate policy under the government of Prime Minister Mark Carney. Just to read a little bit, it says, Canada receives the award because the new government of Prime Minister Mark Carney has flushed years of climate policies down the drain and in completely missing in action at a COP where multilateralism needs to be saved. In addition to the backsliding on policies tackling Canada's climate-destroying pollution, his environment minister, Julie Debrusen, has chosen inaction and silence where leadership was urgently needed. So that's a statement from the Climate Action Network International. So we've got that. That was a couple days ago. Now, that being said, from the 10th of November, here's the headline from CBC. Current government, quote, stands by Canada's climate targets, Environment Minister says. Carney government is committed to the 2035 target set under Trudeau. That is from the Environment Minister, Julie Debrusen. Canada's new Environment Minister and Environment and Climate Change officials confirmed that the federal government is standing by the national climate targets set by the previous Prime Minister. And then, if you're paying attention to the budget, that just got passed. This from the Greens. After nearly 2 weeks of intensive negotiations, Green Party leader Elizabeth May won a major concession from the federal government. Now, that's the Green Party wording today, saying a clear public confirmation from Prime Minister Mark Carney that Canada will meet its legally binding Paris Agreement targets, a commitment that was nowhere to be found in the 2025 federal budget. And if you're following the budget, you will know that Elizabeth May did indeed vote in favor of it. And in QP asked a question for the PM. The PM got up, Prime Minister Carney got up and did confirm this in the House of Commons. So this is just, some of where we are with climate change and some of the points out there. Today on the show, we are talking about folks who are trying to make impacts on climate policy, right? Activists, advocates, people who really care about climate change and the world. Here with me, welcome back to everyone. So Raven Khadija is here with Raven Sound Consulting, Newfoundland and Labrador. Thank you for coming back in. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me, Adam.
Jude Benoit is here, co-founder of the Mixed Coast Collective. Welcome back. How you doing?
Thank you.
And Megs Scott, Fridays for Future. Welcome back too.
Thank you so much.
Megs, we'll start with you. How are we feeling about when we're talking about activism or advocacy? What's on your mind? I know there was a protest up at Confed, but so wherever you want to go with this, but how are you where's your head at?
It's been a lot. I mean, it's hard to look at the world and really stay hopeful 24/7. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's good to look at the people around you that are also doing the work, that are putting in the hours and using their passions to try to make the world a better place. And I think, after the wildfires this summer, after Fiona, it's clear that Newfoundland isn't just in this little bubble that's not going to be affected by climate change. Mm. So it's important that even though we feel small and we feel like our steps won't matter that much, every small victory is a victory. Mm. So I think it's just continuing the fight, continuing to work, and realizing the work is not done. We have to keep going. Even if we're tired, we just need to work together and try to bring people in and engage people.
And talk to folks again about just some of your intersections, right? From Port aux Basques, study in science, some of the, if we were to do the superhero creation story, like, it was a deeply impactful climate charged event that, of destruction.
Yeah.
But it sparked something in you and also folks in the community there.
It did. I mean, seeing the destruction that was literally caused by climate catastrophe and seeing, it's a changing landscape every time I go home to visit. Houses are still being torn down. Neighboring houses to me are being torn down, and like my view from my house is different, and it's hard to wrap your head around. Waves took out homes.
Yeah.
The same thing that gave so many people livelihood, the same thing that so many people loved, took away people's homes and livelihoods. So it really drove me to realize that, climate action is important no matter where you are in the world. And I think as well, I'm studying conservation. That's my whole thesis, is conservation of sea cucumbers, which is really cool. And I think it's pushing to know that it's not just humans on Earth either. Like when we're talking about saving the world, it's not just so we can continue to pollute it. It's to make it better for everything that lives on the planet.
Raven, I'm going to go left to right, then in the middle, back to Jude. We've talked in the past, right, around Black Lives Matter for this province. So equity, community activism. You and I, well, in the lead up to the show, we've talked, but on the air, we haven't on the climate file. Talk to me about what's pushing you into thinking about this, because it's a few things.
Well, actually, I was invited by CFSNL way back when in 2021 to speak on the intersections of climate justice and how it intersects with colonization and, of course, Black and Brown lives. Since then, I will say, and since I'm on air and, y'all can't tell me what to do while I'm live, I will say that I have seen, not a lot, and I will kind of call in, not call out, the climate organizations who don't really see the need to interact with Black Lives Matter and or interact with me about this, because it's something that I have talked about. It's something that I have been invited to share about, but it's almost as if, people don't really want to link all of the issues. I wonder why.
Yeah. So then what is it that you've been thinking about with climate change?
Well, many reasons. The fact of the matter is that I don't see climate justice as just about the environment. To me, it's about ethics, equity, history, and I love history as a historian, and power. Most importantly, marginalized communities, especially, they face the greatest risk and often have the least resources to respond. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, rural and indigenous communities, they are dealing with the coastal erosion, they're dealing with flooding, they're dealing with extreme storms, like my co-interviewer mentioned. And climate change isn't just abstract, it is lived in our everyday communities. And of course, being a Trinbagonian, I'm going to tie it back to why it affects us most of all. So as I mentioned, it's not just about that, it's about the fact that small developing states in the Caribbean, we contribute very, very little to global emissions. And we actually have the least resources to respond to all of that. So, and we also face the most severe climate impacts. So Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados, she has framed climate change as a justice issue. Her Bridgetown initiatives calls for fair global finance and support for adaptation and recovery, programs like Roofs to Reefs, which connect sustainable land projects to healthy marine ecosystems, and Green Rising, which is a youth-led climate initiative that shows that climate justice includes infrastructure, resilience, and youth leadership.
Yeah, and I will say to folks, because we did a show about the impacts of Hurricane Melissa on specifically in this case, we talked about Jamaica, right? And there was a local fundraiser that was happening, and we tied it with, it was talking about climate change, it was talking about the destruction, the global north, the global south, these discussions around what countries that have been kind of putting carbon and carbon pollution out into the atmosphere for decades owe to places that have not. I mean, and I think the term that folks would kind of know around this is, you even just say like a carbon footprint or whatever, like just what they've been putting out. So this is a big part of the discussion.
Absolutely. And I just like to tie really quickly in the fact that hurricanes and all those extreme weather, they show the urgency of climate action. So in terms of the Jamaican Canadian Association, there were other members of the wider Jamaican community who came together, like Dr. Dolores Mullings and the artist Shania Sanderson, who donated her time and their labor to commit and support to the initiative. So it's not just about like associations and organizations, it's that people from wider communities all over and all lots of organizations supported as well.
Yeah, and for that show, folks, if you missed it, Thursday, November 6th, it's up on our pod. It was Cassie Drotch and also Died in Ashanta Wedderburn in studio. And we had some other voices, too, for that discussion. And it was a rather impactful show. Jude, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Remind folks about I've talked to you before. Tell us about Mixed Coast Collective this time, if you could. Of all the things I can ask you, but let's go there.
Okay. Mixed Coast Collective was founded by me and Cassie, who I just mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And we felt, for all the reasons that I think have already been touched on so far on the show, that it was important to have an organization that was based in research, but also two-eyed seeing, and centered BIPOC people, centered newcomers, when it comes to environmentalism, when it comes to climate change work. So right now we have a couple different things happening, including we are doing a second strategy session on November 26th from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. And you can visit our website at Mixed Coast Collective to register for that, as well as our future trainings. We're going to be doing trainings on rain gardens and also on solar panels. And the solar panels are actually led by Deji, who is Nigerian, and he's a solar panel engineer, and Liam, who is and a mechanical engineer from Labrador.
And we're going to hear from Deji in a little bit, maybe if I think in like under 15 minutes. We shall see. I'm going to go to the phones, but I also, I'm going to come back to you just for a brief. I love digging into and getting the re-explanation around two-eyed seeing because for the indigenous term. Leah Movell is on the line. Hi, how you doing?
Hi, Adam. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Atlantic Regional Organizer for the Youth Climate Corps. I mentioned the budget, and now I'm going to re-mention it because there was money in the federal budget for the Youth Climate Corps campaign. Give us a brief remind us what that is, and then tell me about your reaction to where things are at with the budget.
Yeah, thank you. So the Youth Climate Corps is a campaign to create a new public jobs program for people 35 and under to help our communities tackle the climate crisis. These would be 2-year paid training and work placements, and they would fall into 3 broad categories. The first, well, in no particular order, but reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So this is things like retrofitting, building small-scale renewable energy. Another is building community resilience, things like ecosystem restoration, wildfire prevention, and forest management, and also emergency response. So people who can be on the ground to help respond when climate emergencies hit and to make sure people are looked after in those times. So after years of campaigning by hundreds of young activists and many allies, we broke into Budget 2025. We're proud of what has been a hard-fought win, and we're ready to work with the federal government to help this program reflect the vision and the values of the young people who have shaped it and fought for it. That vision and those values include some founding principles that you can learn more about on the website greenjobsforall.ca. Some of them being centering this program on Indigenous knowledge, sovereignty, and and empowering strategically under-resourced communities. And so we're ready to get to work. Alongside our joy in seeing the YCC come to life and our gratitude toward everyone who came together to make it possible, and that includes hundreds of volunteers, hundreds of endorsing organizations, and allies in Parliament, of whom there were many in Atlantic Canada, we're no less aware that we won this program in a budget that generally fails on climate and social policy.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask you, right? Because I started the show talking about the Fossil of the Day award out of COP, which is the bad award, like a Razzie award for film or something. So this is what Canada was getting from the conference on climate change. But then at the same time, there's money for something that you folks have been fighting for a long time. And so I was really curious about where how you looked at the budget through a climate lens.
Yeah, I mean, the climate section of this budget is scant. Our program is not in the climate section of this budget. It's in a section about it's in a section that is more about jobs and tackling the affordability crisis. And so it's being housed with employment and social development with that ministry. And we're seeing in this budget big increases in military spending, continued subsidies to fossil fuel companies that drive the climate crisis, cuts to social programs, neglect of the climate crisis, and cuts to immigration. So like I said, while I am proud and hopeful that we were able to push this program into being, for me, the budget does not match the aspirational tone of Carney's rhetoric or his commitments to invest in a strong, clean, and fair future for young Canadians. And it makes me wonder what kind of nation we're endeavoring to build with this budget and who we're building it for. Military spending isn't going to save us from extinction. Subsidizing the fossil fuel industry won't prevent its inevitable and ongoing collapse. Neglecting the climate crisis won't protect us from its impacts, and cuts to immigration won't change the government neglect that has led to the housing crisis, crumbling healthcare infrastructure, and high unemployment and inequality. So we have to reject the scapegoating of migrants by politicians for problems that they have the power, authority, and resources to correct. So all this to say, the budget has failed to convince me that this government plans to take things in a life-affirming direction. Winning the YCC pilot has been like a small, foggy window of hope, hard-fought hope. And like I said, we are ready to work with the federal government to expand that window in a time that can and does sometimes feel hopeless. And on that note, I want to thank my friends in the studio and our broader climate and social justice organizing communities that are made up of so many inspiring people working hard every day to offer hope, connection, solidarity, knowledge, skills, and resources in the face of these intersecting crises. And we hope that this program will provide a pathway for young people who are looking to roll up their sleeves and get to work helping their community in the face of the climate crisis with a pathway to local and sustainable and meaningful work, which is something we really need here in this province where, I mean, we face a higher than average, consistently higher than average unemployment rate. Right now, youth unemployment rate across the country is higher than it's been in decades, and it's higher than average here. And a lot of us are forced to leave the communities we care about to find financial security and reliable work. And what we'd really like to see, because Adam, the funding committed in this budget is only going to create 350 living wage positions per year across the country. So it's not enough to meet the intersecting crises of climate and youth unemployment, and it even falls short of the Liberals' own commitment in their platform. So we've called for 20,000 positions to start and a commitment to scale with demand, because we're aware that young people understand the threats we face and they're ready to serve our communities. And we expect this pilot program is going to reach capacity fast. What we hope is that this will serve as a push for its expansion. And we also want to see the provincial government of Newfoundland and Labrador come to the table and cost match this program so that more young people in NL can access this pathway to local and meaningful and sustainable work at home.
Leah Mouville, thank you so much. I always appreciate you coming on the show, giving an update, and the fact that we've had conversations before. You've been a guest before, and you've talked to me about the Youth Climate Corps and the potential. And now to be at a point where something is starting, I look forward to continuing this conversation as things get built up and built out. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it.
All right, be well. So there you go, right? You talk to folks. It's funny, right? You spend a couple of years in a seat, and like, oh, this thing we want this thing, and then all of a sudden, even though there's a lot to unpack with what was just said there, for like, hey, looking at the budget and what it actually means for climate, but there is something there, and there are jobs to be talked about. I find that interesting of note. Anyone with thoughts on what we just heard? But we do have a caller I want to go to. But anyone with thoughts?
I just thought it was really interesting, a lot of what Leah mentioned, but also the fact that she specifically mentioned the scapegoating of immigrants and the fact that everyone believes that if it is, we just cut it out and we cut everybody down. And of course, there's a whole lot of a layered discussion, which I will bring because I believe in anti-oppression, anti-racism. Yep. I believe the fact that when you are a visible minority, you're racialized, and also it's like if you are an immigrant, regardless, despite having an accent, it's not an accent. I have had many racialized friends who are black, who are a visible minority, and then they kept being asked, where are you from? And I know that that's a Newfoundland thing, and that's an example, but it's also because they have no accent. They just look visibly like a minority. So therefore, it's the idea of everybody who is a visible minority is somehow, especially to Atlantic Canada, is somehow come from away person or somebody who has no ties or an immigrant. And then if we wanted to break down LIPA, which I won't go into depth because I know we have time, I want to have to say to everybody, is the fact that you can look at how immigrants and how certain types of immigrants, aka refugees and certain, are given a different type of connotation entirely, and it's not a positive one.
Yeah, and it's othering, right? It's this othering that can happen to folks and does happen to folks, and how people deal with that. Any thoughts, Jude?
I'm happy that we won something, and I say we because I've actually been working with Leah locally to talk about Indigenous involvement and newcomer involvement and what that would look like for the YCC. So I'm happy that there was a small win, but just like Leah, I'm disappointed that it wasn't a bigger win. But I also do think it's very telling that it fell under jobs and training, which is very important, but it fell under that instead of under climate. Yeah. I think that says something.
Megs?
I am in the same boat. I'm happy because a win is a win, but also it wasn't enough. And as Leah said, like, those jobs are going to fill up, and the number that they gave is not going to help with the problem of unemployment. And it's really important that we start looking towards the future and not just what can we do to have a quick fix. It's what can we implement that's going to last for decades.
Can you give me a word on two-eyed seeing, please? Just for the explainer.
Two-eyed seeing is a teaching from Elder Albert Marshall, and it means looking at, I'm going to use it in climate science, but it can be applied to many things. Yeah. But looking at climate science with the ways of Indigenous traditional knowing and also with the ways of what we would call Western knowing, so environmental science, mechanical engineering, everything that we're bringing into it.
Yeah, two-eyed seeing. That makes great sense. Yeah. Oh, thank you. On the lines, Peter Knoll. Hello, Peter. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Adam. How are you today?
Goodbye. Hanging out, talking about climate change. What are your thoughts today on Day 4 Climate Week for the Signal? Do you have any thoughts around advocacy, activism, climate change?
Well, of course, I'm very supportive of activism, and, I would certainly compliment all your guests. What I've had to say, I've said before on your program, but I think it's good to repeat it.
Yeah.
We actually don't have a climate crisis. Mm-hmm. What we have is a climate disaster. As I've said before on your program, I have 35 years of experience in the offshore petroleum industry, and a lot of my work, maybe most of my work, was related to the prevention of major industrial disasters, like the Ocean Ranger, of course, Deepwater Horizon, Piper Alpha, West Stray Mine disaster, and so on. So I've read a lot about major industrial disasters. The climate disaster that's currently started is basically a major industrial disaster, albeit on a global scale. It has the same root causes. It has the same contributing factors. It's followed the same pattern. Actually, it's almost textbook. So what happens from here is this disaster has gone from a crisis to a disaster in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, if you look at the climate science, which I'm a big fan of and have great faith in the scientific method, you will see that over the last 3 or 4 years, not only has global warming diverged from what the models tell us, but the frequency and severity of extreme weather is starting to diverge from what would be predicted with this level of warning.
Yeah, the extremes are more extreme and more frequent than even some of the models were saying in the beginning.
Exactly, yeah. Adam. Thank you very much for clarifying that. So, from a scientific point of view, if you do the statistics, this comes out as basically noise. They don't have enough data to make predictions or make projections on the basis of this, which is, that's the way science works, and it's a good thing. Science is very conservative. But see, I work in risk management, and from my point, I don't work anymore. From my point of view, this is obviously a turning of the corner. And I am fairly certain that this mess is going to accelerate far, far faster than climate science is able to tell us, or that people, perhaps even most of our people who advocate to help stop climate change, realize this disaster has started. We don't have 10, 20 years to try to correct our course on this. Basically, the Titanic has hit the iceberg. We are sinking. We have to act now. Now, one of the myths about major industrial disasters, and there are many myths about them, is that major industrial disasters are caused by stupidity, carelessness, malfeasance, and certainly there's, in some disasters, some of those elements are prevalent. But basically, major industrial disasters are caused by normal people doing what normal people normally do. And that's why in high-risk industries, you have to put in so much time, effort, resources into developing the necessary equipment, policies, and procedures to prevent them. None of this is happening globally now. We're headed down a very dark road, and I can tell you now from 35 years of experience that when things go to hell, they usually go to hell in a big hurry. So it's a very dark message, but it is my view of what the reality is. So thanks for listening to my spiel.
Hey, I always appreciate your spiels. Thanks for calling in, Peter.
No problem.
Peter Knoll there with thoughts. Before I go back to and by the way, Peter, as you're still listening, as you were talking, the three guests in studio were doing an awful lot of nodding in agreement with the points you're making. I will go back to them shortly. But first, Jude mentioned earlier solar panels, right? So one of the things that we're talking about renewables, we're talking about clean energy when we think about climate change, when we think about mitigation. So putting out less carbon pollution into the atmosphere to slow to limit global warming, which is ongoing. Also, renewables are getting awfully cheap too. Deji Oparindi is on the line. Solar expert, engineer in training. Sir, thank you for taking time to take our call. How you doing?
I'm good, and you?
Good, good. Tell folks a little bit about yourself. So you graduated from engineering at MUN, but paint a bigger picture of who you are.
Okay, yeah. I'm actually an immigrant from Nigeria, where I had my bachelor's degree in electrical and electronic engineering. And back then in Nigeria, I took part in some solar projects because we saw it as an energy solution back then in Nigeria. So we basically targeted residential houses and small-scale businesses. So, but not on the grid part, basically focusing on off the grid part. So we work according to the specification of whoever needs our service. So back then in 2022, I came to Canada to pursue a master's in energy systems engineering with the aim of going broader into solar and wind, to influence the world. And obviously, I know a little bit of climate change, and I've been trying to use my expertise to try and help the world, because climate change is eating up the world so fast. And I could tell you some part in Arabian part, they can't even come out during the daytime,
Right?
Because of the heat. It's going to burn their skins. And especially in Newfoundland and Labrador at the moment, we are a coastal city, especially St. John's. And if the sea level keeps on rising at this rate, in the next coming years, we are not going to have any space again, because it will be soaked up with water. So I'm an expert in solar engineering, and I aim to use that to reduce the effect of climate change. Yeah.
So then when you look around at the pace for the transition that is happening, what do you think about the pace of it and the speed, whether thinking about Nigeria, here in Newfoundland and Labrador, or Canada, or globally?
So according to Nigeria, the pace is really increasing at which people are adopting solar engineering solution. The pace is really increasing in Nigeria because the electricity supply in Nigeria is not that good enough. So people switch to it just to provide their own electricity and to be able to save it. But here in Newfoundland and Labrador is a little bit slow paced because the version of people that even knows about climate change, it's not up to 20%. Some people don't believe in it as of right now. So I believe ignorance is one of the main threats to the adaptation of renewable energy. So which is why me and my team, Cassie and Mixed Coast Collection, we are trying to work on a particular project. We are aiming for it next year so that we can educate people, work on a small solar energy project, and hopefully some other towns adopt that when we achieve success with our first project. So I believe in coming years, with a lot of awareness and success in our project, people are going to know much about solar engineering, and hopefully a lot of people are going to adopt it.
Deji, thanks so much for coming on the show, taking time. We'll stay in touch on this. There's more to be done, sir, and this is a great first little chat. Thank you.
Yeah.
Deji Operindi there, talking about solar power. Jude, thoughts on what Deji was saying?
Oh, I'm so happy that we have Deji on our team. I'm the deep engagement person. I'm the community engagement person. I'm not the engineer by any means. But I will say that Newfoundlanders are willing and wanting solar is what we're finding while going out to mainly rural parts of Newfoundland. Folks really, really do want solar. It's just about being able to learn the skills on not just how to install them, but how to upkeep them, how to take care of them, how to repair them. So I'm really, really excited that we're going to be able to offer that training soon. And I hope that it helps a lot of folks out.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but for places, for homes, if you for getting solar panels, right? Once you have it, the cost is the getting it and putting it on your roof. But then you're getting electricity that brings down your monthly cost of electricity of paying from a grid type system. And in parts of the world where, let's say, it's extreme heat, and we've talked about extreme heat on this show, also for the podcast, this is Newfoundland and Labrador, Ariana Kellen's investigation into looking into care homes in this province and cooling systems. If you have a house and you have a clean affordable energy, there's more of a chance in an extreme heat environment for you to perhaps be able to get something like air conditioning. Like these things, there's equity in this, in this part of the conversation, right? I mean, Raven, which is what you came here to talk about as well, right? So some of this, when you look at what is able to be put out for folks and get access to, when you have, like we said, Indigenous communities, racialized communities, communities that have long bore the brunt of climate change and impacts, some of these things are helping lift the boats and tides for folks.
Yeah, for sure. So I would like to add to that. I think that's incredibly important. And I especially like when, as you mentioned, about back home in Nigeria and what that means and how climate change affects and how they address it. So really and truly, again, climate justice is not just about the environment, but it's about protecting the people who will inherit the earth and inherit the planet. I know that's like a really cliched saying, but what I really mean to say is it's about communities with the least resources to safeguard their health, their livelihoods, their ways of life, while multi-billion corporations continue to exploit and damage the earth on a scale that they will never have to personally bear. And what I want to chat about is the fact that, like, even I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and studies show that road dust contains heavy metals like cadmium, lead, and zinc, and many people, including myself, suffered as an asthmatic, and we face, and because we have and like I said, many people, asthma is one of the biggest issues in Trinidad and Tobago. We have an overburdened healthcare system. I remember I hated getting sick. Every time I started to wheeze, I would start to cry because I just knew, when I have ADHD, that me and my mother would have to do a phrase where she would call it scrubbing bench, and that just means that we would go in there from like 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would stay running, because we have to like move and scoot because there's a long line, and we'd have to do that for hours and hours, and sometimes we wouldn't be seen. I'll be wheezing and she'd be holding my chest and rubbing me, and we wouldn't be seen until at least 10 or 13 hours. So like I remember, and it's a visual core memory to this day, that even when I'm in Canada, and even when I do feel sick, if I can handle it on my own, I will do that, because I have such an aversion. Even though it's not nearly as long, it's still not perfect here as well. I still have yet to receive a doctor, even though I've been on the list here since Kingdom Comes. I've been here since 2018, January 1st, mind you. So again, environmental justice cannot be separated from racial justice, from colonial legacies, from extractive economies, and historical inequalities shape who suffers most. Food systems, health, and access to resources are all part of the same equation.
And I'm going to bring someone in who I think can echo a lot of what you're saying. Vanessa Hartley is on the line, environmental justice advocate. We've reached Vanessa in Nova Scotia. Vanessa, thanks for coming on the program.
Hi, Adam. Thank you for having me. And Raven, I can't wait to dive into some of the things you're touching on here.
Yeah. Like, I love, so oftentimes, Vanessa, with this show, what we do, for the Signal, it's a Newfoundland and Labrador show, but we love branching out to bring folks in from, whether it's the Atlantic Canadian region, across Canada, sometimes outside of Canada, because I feel that for a lot of these topics, when we talk about connection, and we get guests in such as yourself, it helps with understanding sometimes some of the bigger pictures. So on the discussion of climate justice, I'm just wondering if you could talk a bit about your thoughts on it, given this Climate Week on the Signal, and also just tell us a bit more about yourself.
Sure, thank you. Well, that's definitely a loaded introduction, so maybe I'll start by introducing myself.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, great. My name is Vanessa Hartley, and I am an 8th-generation Black Wales descendant. So, as mentioned, I'm from Mi'kmaq, so I'm in the region of Keswick and Shelburne, Nova Scotia. So, born and raised in my hometown, very proud of my ancestry and my roots in the community. And so we, as a Black Loyalist African Nova Scotian community, would have been one of the largest points for free Blacks outside of Africa at the time of arrival. So we hold quite a deep and profound history in the Atlantic province, and definitely looking forward to diving into a little bit about what Raven was just touching on, the experiences of environmental injustice and racism that cannot be separated from, colonial practices and the legacies that we've seen across the nation and as well the world. So, yeah, I am looking forward to diving in today to this conversation and finding some of those connections, or as we like to say, intersections, of really dissecting the problem.
Yeah, so looking through the Nova Scotia side of things, as you were coming up, what was your, like, you talked about your family history, the community history, and also those the intersections with thinking marginalized communities and climate change, colonialist practices. What was the catalyst, or what were some of the pushes, nudges for yourself to be like, I need to forge a path for myself on environmental justice for advocacy?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think for myself, the turning point, or the awakening, as I like to say, is recognizing that I didn't know anything about what was really happening in my backyard. In 2019, I felt an immense calling to speak up about injustice, as many of us did as we were looking at, global movements of Black Lives Matter. And I think for me, I finally felt compelled to speak on the injustice that was being experienced at a community level. So I actually started off talking about racism experience in the in the educational space. And, Raven and I have had lots of conversations about that, and that's definitely something that is individual but collective in education. It's a system that continues to, confine and oppress and assimilate individuals, and that spans beyond just African Nova Scotian or African Canadian. But, realizing that we had a massive issue in our community of environmental racism was eye-opening. And so for me, it really was connected about the water in which we are, drinking and experiencing as a community. But ultimately, it came from the love of my community. I was, looking for answers as to why my family had passed on so quickly, and, why our community was always in a constant state of grief. And, it seemed like the only time that we see each other was at funerals or gatherings to, celebrate the passing of life. So I think, trying to understand all of these complicated questions as a young teenager, it really did create a foundation for me to start doing some community work that was, in the spirit of unity or collaboration. And it allowed me to, I would say, start doing some really important work on a level that was digestible, and actionable.
So for you, what does progress look like? Because we've spent part of this hour too. We started talking about like the federal budget, and we mentioned money for the Youth Climate Corps, so there was that. But at the same time, folks were saying how not enough for them on the climate side for what was hoped for. So that's one side of it. But if we look at progress, and there's lots of ways to look at little bits of progress, what does it look like for you?
That's another great question, so thank you. And I like your framing around that, because I like to say that sometimes if we wake up in the morning and we get dressed for work, that's a win. That's an incremental piece of success.
In this world? Yeah. I mean, just showing up at work dressed, mission accomplished. No, I'm with you.
Right.
I'm also dressed today. I wear pants and a sweater.
There you go. I got my pants and my blazer on. I've dressed. I've made it. I showed up, and I showed up with an intention, and that in itself is, success and a win. But I think speaking, in terms of environmental racism, we've seen lots of wins throughout, my lifetime, and I hope past my lifetime. I think that, in Canada, so-called Canada, we have lacked progress in this area. When we, look across jurisdictions and different nations, we can look to tangible actions and outcomes that can be implemented to achieve, justice for these communities. But I think something I've noticed is we've now, from a community level, we've surpassed raising awareness. We've spent almost a decade raising awareness, and that in itself, that mobilization and that grassroots movement has translated into action. So, we see the passing of Bill C-226, which, the act respecting environmental justice and racism, now in the Canadian law means something. There's still some work to do, because the federal government does not want to define what environmental racism or justice looks like or means to them, institutionally. And that's where we start to see some of the lack of action and the cost of inaction over time periods. So yes, there has been some momentum. There has been some good action, but I think that in comparison to global, countries and nations, we don't really have a good handle on what this is because we don't have a system, meaning the Constitution is not set up to protect individuals against this kind of harm.
All right, and you've got a few minutes. We've only have about 10 minutes left of the show. I want to go back to my other guests and then come back to you as well. And because I like the future look around where we're trying to go. So like for yourself, mentioned the Constitution there, and Megs, if we're looking forward, right, for Fridays for Future or the other work you're doing, what are you looking at? What's coming and what you're trying to hope to do, achieve, work on in this climate action side of things?
Yeah, it's definitely about engagement. It's about bringing in youth and about hearing what the youth feel about the future. So I know when I started the climate movement, I was probably about 18, 19 when I really started focusing on climate action. And then after Fiona, I really zoned in. And I think it's bringing in the high schoolers. It's bringing in the youth that are our future.
Are you getting them? Like, because I remember 2019 and the climate strike was blocking the road going up to Confed.
Yeah.
Now the one I saw the other day, the numbers are not there. Like,
No.
are you getting and if not, how?
It's been a difficult fight, and I think a lot of people, with the weight of what is going on in the world, people find it really hard to engage. And I like to remind people that being engaged actually does bring you hope. It shows you that other people are thinking like you, other people have a plan for the future, that other people care about the planet. And I think it's reminding people that even just talking to your representatives, like we have a letter writing party happening on Sunday at the Newfoundland Embassy, where we're just inviting people to come in, write a letter. We are going to send it off to our representatives because it is free to write a letter to your representatives. And I think it's just important to remind people that even just talking about what you care about to the people that represent you in government, those little steps add up.
Yeah, there's power. Well, and there's power in that, and also from talking to Leah earlier about the Youth Climate Corps, talked to Leah for a few years now, and now it's something, right? Not now, Leah's not happy with it or content with like where it's at, but
it's a drop in the bucket.
There's a start there.
There's something happening.
There's a way of looking at that.
Exactly.
Right? Jude, what about yourself for Mixed Coast Collective or any of the other things you're doing?
I mean, I love the work that I do with Mixed Coast Collective. And again, please reach out to the Mixed Coast Collective website. If you'd like to sign up to our trainings, they are free and they're open to anyone. You don't need a certain level of education. But for me, I think the reason I started doing this work, and I'm so glad that we brought Vanessa on here, because I am a Mi'kmaq person and I grew up in a community that had a boil order on for their water for at least 50 years prior to my birth, and still I'm turning 33 in a couple of weeks, and still they don't have clean drinking water. And what she said about only getting together with families during grief really, really impacted me. And I would love to see us get together to celebrate jobs. I would love to see us get together to celebrate clean drinking water, to celebrate having a future, an industry that supports us as Mi'kmaq people. So, yeah,
Thanks for that.
Me.
Raven.
So for me, again, with Vanessa and I, we have been talking, having so many plans about, because myself being Afro-Indigenous, I'm not Indigenous to these islands, I'm Taino. Vanessa and I have talked so much about what is meaningful impact of like discussing and intersecting colonization, intersecting it from a truly equity aspect. What would that look like in both Newfoundland and Labrador, and also tying it with their experience and their thing in the broader Atlantic region. So myself and Tamara, and also people from PEI, so Tamara, Seal, and I, we're always having discussions and talking about it. And it really seems to me to really it comes back to the question of what does social justice look like in practice. So I think it would require both global and local solutions, reforming certain finance systems, investing in vulnerable communities, and also including marginalized communities in decisions are essential. Like, I love the work that Mixed Coast NL is doing, but I would love to see them engaging with the Black Lives Matter, NL, with Ribbon Song Standing NL, to take a more equitable, a more approach to what does racism and that look in that way. I will also say that before it is we jump to these solutions, let's talk about what's happening as we speak. Like, I was supposed to go back home for the first time since I arrived to these shores, and there's so much geopolitical instability right now in my region. I had to absolutely stop it. So, like, right now I'm showing up, and you can see, because nobody can see me, like, my makeup is all done, my hair is well laid, but at the same time, I'm very upset, I'm very emotional because I have to deal with this. We do know that there is a global pattern to a lot of these challenges that people are facing. We can see a pattern of powerful states advancing very strategic objectives under the guise of support and humanitarianism. In the Caribbean, U.S. military and security programs, they influence regional priorities. And globally, for example, in Palestine, U.S. military and diplomatic support affects the effectiveness of international interventions, raising critical questions about whose interests are really solely being served here. And I think that it's going to require us to have even deeper conversations, more honest conversations, and more open conversations.
Thank you, Raven. Vanessa Hartley, final thoughts from you on today. I've got one more call to take, and we're 4 minutes away, but just final thoughts for you to clue up on the Nova Scotia and your thoughts.
Yeah, I think what Raven has painted is a beautiful illustration of some of these massive challenges that we see globally. And I don't think it's impossible to unpack. I think it just takes effort and time and willingness. And, to the ladies around the table, thank you for those comments. They were very impactful. And you have me thinking, the space of engagement is one that I definitely respect and love. But I think for me, my final saying is, if there's anybody that can take anything from this, is you don't need to have, a science degree or a bachelor's in science to necessarily take space in environment. Environmentalism is a beautiful thing because it connects into anything that you're interested in. You just have to think about it and be a little more conscious. So I would say, if you don't know where to start and you want to be involved, just start thinking about in ways you can include it in your day-to-day life. It's very simple. It might look like, waking up, getting dressed with that wind and taking your water bottle for the day. Start small, because those little actions is what snowballs into massive actions. And together, collectively, we can make a change.
Vanessa Hartley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Richard Whitaker is on the line from Portugal Cove. Hello, sir. How you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there.
Good. We only got about 2 minutes, but go for it. Thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. One of them is that I was very upset that our premier sort of denied that whether oil was a significant contributor to our climate change issues. Now, that's not good enough, I mean, yes, I suppose you could support, financially going for the oil until the demand goes out of, question. But you might as well be straightforward and honest about things anyway, and that's definitely dishonest. The second one that I wanted to make was Portugal Cove St. Philip's bought, with assistance from the federal government and so on, small pickups. And they put out an excellent pamphlet on the savings related to that and expected savings and all the rest of it. And they are substantial. As it says, I'll give you one simple one, that, there's only in an electric car, there's only one engine part, really, in a general sense. And in any gas vehicle, there are hundreds of moving parts. So, just that alone costs you a lot, and never mind all the other things, and then, of course, the fuel savings. In a general sense, I guess you could
30
say,
seconds, sir.
Yeah, that Newfoundland and Labrador has pulled above its weight in terms of contributing to reduction of reliance on I gasped through, not deliberately, but through the Churchill Falls operations. And the same thing will happen with the Gull Island one once it comes on, and so on. So that side of it is great. But, and of course...
I got to run. We're right up at the top of it. Give me a call back tomorrow. We're doing Climate Day again tomorrow. So let's finish this tomorrow on the air.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, take care.
Thanks, sir.
Bye-bye.
That's it for the show. Thanks, folks.